Good morning, DawgNation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by ServPro. What a great time to be talking Georgia football. Reigning SEC champs for a second straight year, looking ahead of the college football playoff. Chaos all around us. We love the soap opera drama of the arguments about who didn't get in the playoff and all the coaching change stuff and everything else. And we just get to sit back and watch it. And that's what we're going to do here today. Fun with a look back at Georgia's win against Alabama, curiosity looking ahead at what might come next for Georgia, including what counts to me as a huge surprising piece of news that we'll get to you later on that has been out there for a couple of days. You probably heard it by now, but when I first heard it, I was like, well, and there'd been some rumblings and grumblings even last week. I was like, what? So we'll get into all of this. Two great guests, Connor Riley, Jake Fromm. We have coaching changes in the SEC to talk about here today. So it is jam-packed. We may be getting closer to December, and Georgia as a football team may be resting and recuperating. They should be. But we, on this program, are not slowing down at all. So we're glad that you're here with us for it. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by ServPro. Cleaning, restoration, construction.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
All right, so for Georgia right now, there is a lot going on at the same time. Of course, Georgia's getting ready for the college football playoff. Of course, Georgia's thinking about what might come if it's able to win after its Sugar Bowl game and the path towards maybe another national championship. And all of this happens simultaneous to the fact that Georgia did just win the SEC championship and it did just beat Alabama. And let me just say this for a quick moment off the top, and then we'll roll into what we're going to talk about today. As someone who has been very, very blessed in my life to be at all these big games for Georgia in recent years, what Georgia's done the last couple of years in Atlanta in December feels as big as anything to me. Beating Texas last year, beating Alabama this year. Having been in L.A., for instance, TCU, the national championship game. I like seeing Georgia win national championships, I really do. But in terms of the emotional impact on me, it's not like I was happier in January of 2023 after beating TCU 65-7 than I was after beating Alabama on Saturday or Texas a week ago. And I don't think we should lose sight of that this is how special the SEC is. And in a world in which, well, maybe we should do away with conference championship games, maybe we should expand the playoff, my response to that is maybe you should do away with your conference championship game. But down here, our conference championship game actually still functions pretty well in terms of how it entertains us, in terms of the meaning it seems to have. We're actually doing okay down here without any involvement from any of you anywhere, whoever the yous happen to be in this case. Obviously, the argument ongoing between ACC, Notre Dame, things like that. We're doing just fine down here, right? I mean, our brand of football really works. In fact, the college football playoff benefits from the SEC's participation in it more so than the SEC benefits from some sort of validation by the college football playoff. That's a soapbox off the top of the program. Just wanted to say that, but it's a lead-in into this, which is in the midst of everything we've got going on right now, including a pursuit of a third national championship here in this Kirby Smart era. I find myself still being really, really happy about the SEC championship, both because it is a trophy and, as Kearis Jackson once said, number on the wall for UGA, and also, and we're going to be honest about this, it just feels good to beat Alabama. It does. It does. Alabama, and the word we used a lot last week was nuisance. Alabama had been a nuisance to Georgia. Alabama at one point in time was the standard-bearing flagship program, the gold standard in the SEC. They obviously aren't that anymore, but they still, even in this diminished state compared to the Nick Saban era, they are still a nuisance to Georgia. Kalen DeBoer beaten Kirby Smart twice. The final Nick Saban team beat Kirby Smart in the 2023 SEC Championship. Even as Alabama is a bit of an empire in decline, it still has been a nuisance to Georgia. So it feels just really, really good to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide. It does. That in itself is a bit of a trophy, a little bit like winning the SEC championship was. So I think it's important as we think about everything that's still coming for Georgia. I do think it's appropriate to also look around and say, hey, you know what? Kind of nice to beat Alabama. And in fact, I thought one of Georgia's most important players, its on-field leader, in many ways its spiritual leader, C.J. Allen, when he spoke after the game on Saturday, I thought he did a good job of saying, you know what, if we're being honest, while we approach all games the same, the result, they don't all feel the same. And maybe there was an aspect of this game just a little bit more special than the rest. This is good stuff from C.J. Allen. Take a listen to this.
Man, it feels great. It feels great. I'd be lying if I said it's not something we thought about, coming to this game. But, man, it's just all boiled down to us, making it about us.
So simple and to the point, but there's a lot in there, which is, as a football player, there's a thing you're supposed to say, and Georgia's very good at always saying the thing it's supposed to say. There's a thing you're supposed to say, but in life we all know this, that below the polite talk, there is a hidden truth. And C.J. Allen, after the fact, is willing to acknowledge, of course this game is bigger than a lot of the others we would play. It's even bigger than some of the SEC championships that Georgia has played. With all due respect to an Auburn or an LSU or whatever else, yes, beating Alabama in the SEC championship, there is just a little extra punch when it comes to something like that. And C.J. Allen's a smart guy. He's more than also honest. He's more than happy to acknowledge, yes, you know what? This one did have a little extra feeling to it. I would say the Texas game a year ago, for different reasons, but similar feelings, had a little extra punch to it when you got that team in its first year in the SEC. Some games just feel bigger than others. You better approach them all the same way, but it is just a fact that some games just feel bigger than others, and this one obviously did for Georgia. So therefore, our celebration of the win for Georgia against Alabama is going to last a little bit longer. You know what? We got time for it because Georgia, after taking care of its business, it doesn't play again until New Year's Day. So you know what? We got time to stretch our legs a little bit. We got time to reflect on what Georgia's been through a little bit, and we are going to do it. And we are going to do it this way. I just said a moment ago, Georgia, very good about always saying what needs to be said. Apparently, some Alabama players aren't quite so good at that. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. We were aware of this statement last week, and you'll notice some of y'all think I don't have any discretion, and sometimes I don't. I probably lead with my emotions more so than my logic. But last week, we actually did not make a very big deal about this on the show because the Alabama player in question, if I'm being completely candid, I believe he probably misspoke. I think he meant to say one thing and said another. But whatever his intentions were, he said what he said, and it definitely got some attention last week. We didn't stir the pot on this because I was trying to be excessively fair in a game that already had a lot of fever pitch of emotions, but it was certainly noticeable. The Alabama defensive lineman, Tim Keenan, who was injured and did not play in Alabama's win against Georgia in September, was talking about his role in this week's game and the big clash of titans between the Georgia offensive line, the Alabama defensive line. And Keenan was complimentary of Georgia to begin with, but maybe a poor choice of words by the time this particular audio clip was done. This was Tim Keenan last week. Listen to this and see if you think, was this bulletin board material for Georgia? Some people thought it was. Listen to this.
They're very sound, especially in SEC play. The trenches, it get kind of nasty in there, but it's going to definitely be a great battle, one for the centuries, like it is always on Alabama and Georgia plays. But we should, I feel like that's the mismatch of the game.
So at the end, he says, this is the mismatch of the game. And as I said before, maybe I'm just, toxic empathy here, but I thought Keenan misspoke because previous to this, he says, no, this is, it's always a colossal battle between these two, whatever the words he essentially setting it up as if it's going to be a clash of titans and a big battle. It always is between Georgia and Alabama. I think what he meant to say, I believe what he meant to say is that this is going to be a big matchup. This is the matchup of the game. This is the matchup that everybody wants to see. But he accidentally said mismatch. Now, as I said, we were trying to be excessively generous to Keenan going into last week's game just because there was already a lot of emotion around Georgia and Alabama as it is. But to the victor goes the spoils, and if Georgia wants to have some fun with all of this, they are more than free to do so, and that is a right that Georgia did reserve for itself and did, at least we think, maybe on social media, a little bit of a clapback, a response to what some people thought was Alabama bulletin board material. Tim Keenan calling it a mismatch, his defensive line against the Georgia offensive line. Well, when Nate Frazier scored a touchdown to go up 21-0 in this game, we'll show you on the screen here, there is a shot of Keenan diving to try to get him, Frazier running towards the end zone, and the Georgia social media account right there says mismatch. And that was the statement from Georgia on social media, pretty clearly having some fun with that, kind of clapping back a little bit against what some people thought was bulletin board material. So if you're Georgia, you win the game, you earn the right to do that, and that is a right that Georgia chose to exercise. Now, I'll also say this. On our show yesterday, we do our R.S. Andrews cool down. Some of this came up a little bit there, too, about enjoying all of this. And some Georgia fans were making a big deal on our chat yesterday, those who were watching live on video, about the fact that Georgia had held Alabama. Speaking of mismatches, Georgia held Alabama to -3 rushing yards, making a really big deal about that. We were laughing and joking about it. And as someone who is just old enough to remember, like the very first Georgia game I have almost any memory of whatsoever, I don't remember watching it, but I remember the reaction to it when Georgia beat Texas in the 1983 season, the 1984 Cotton Bowl. The final score was 10-9, and the long-time joke was, hey, what time is it in Texas? And for a long time, even now when Georgia plays Texas, you'll have Georgia fans of about my age, a little older, who will say, hey, what time is it in Texas, BA? And everybody always remembers the 10-9. That was just the joke that came up. And so what we said was, can we take that joke template and can we remake it for a modern age? That's what we were talking about yesterday. And so I posited, what if we started saying, what's the temperature in Tuscaloosa? -3. And so I took this for a little test spin on X yesterday. What's the temperature in Tuscaloosa? Not bad engagement numbers for a December Monday on this. Got 69 responses, almost all of those angry Alabama fans. So for those of you who are wondering, does this joke have some legs? Maybe it does. What's the temperature in Tuscaloosa? -3 as a way of mocking Alabama for having -3 rushing yards against UGA. Based on the social media activity yesterday on Twitter, this one might have some legs here. So if you want to have some fun with that, that seems to be working okay right now. Georgia doing a good job of having fun in its own right, making a little bit of fun of Alabama and a player who called it a mismatch between the various lines of scrimmage. The point is, it feels good to be an SEC champion once again. As C.J. Allen acknowledged, feels good to have beaten Alabama to get there, and the joy from that is not going to go away anytime soon. So with that said, we'll shift gears to something a little bit more serious for a moment, and that is this. When you look at how Georgia got it done on Saturday, why it was this Georgia offensive line was able to overcome what Tim Keenan called, whether accidentally or not, a mismatch in this game, part of that is because of the role that Malachi Toliver plays, stepping in for the injured Drew Bobo. But I'm telling you right now, this was a hot topic on the show last week. I talked to a lot of former Georgia players off the air, and every person that I spoke to who's really plugged in on this, they were all pretty much saying the same thing. And sometimes it would come in the hushed tones of, man, BA, I tell you, I'm a little bit worried about this Drew Bobo situation. This is a big deal. And it was a big deal. We thought this was really serious. We said plenty going into the game that sometimes the conventional wisdom is just correct and that maybe Georgia really will be worse without Drew Bobo. Maybe now that still means you can win the game. You can be diminished with your performance and still find a way to win, but maybe it's just true. Maybe Georgia really is just going to miss Drew Bobo in this game, and perhaps it did, but for all we can tell, Malachi Toliver stepped in for Drew Bobo in a very challenging spot, battling Tim Keenan across from him, and you know what? Malachi Toliver did a really good job in this game, the best we can tell. And I'll give you a couple of other opinions on this that probably matter more than, certainly matters more than mine does. Let's start with Kirby Smart on the role that Malachi Toliver played in helping Georgia beat Alabama, because you probably don't get there and you probably don't get as convincing a win as you got if not for the way in which Georgia was able to overcome the injury to Drew Bobo. So let's give Malachi Toliver the flowers here that he deserves, starting with Kirby Smart.
The biggest thing is get the snap there, right? That's 50% of the battle. Just get the snap there and get it accurate, and that was my concern. I knew he would play well, play hard, play physical. He did that, but I think the way we practice and what he went through last year, prepared him for this year. He was prepared for this game because of everything he's been through. That kid, he had an injury, an ankle injury. Then he had he was out for another like 2-3 weeks with an injury. So, I mean, the kid's been through it. And he stepped up tonight, played well in Drew's absence, and I'm proud for him.
So that's Kirby Smart, and obviously evaluating that from a coaching standpoint. But I think there's an even better piece of evidence that proves just how well Malachi Toliver played. In a minute, I'm going to play Gunnar Stockton talking about Malachi's performance. And I think a lot of you do understand this, but you got to get the proper context for this. We hear from Gunnar after essentially every game. Gunnar does a press conference. And listen, love Gunnar Stockton. Gunnar's job is not to talk. Gunnar's job is to play football. Georgia's long since had the idea that we do our talking with our helmets. So if Gunnar doesn't want to say much, Gunnar doesn't have to. That is his prerogative. Well, guess what? Gunnar doesn't want to say very much. And the typical answer from Gunnar Stockton when these post-game press conferences is like 3 words long. And it's his right. I'm not mad at him. As far as I'm concerned, no big deal. You just keep making plays. We'll let somebody else do the talking. No big deal. But if you've ever watched one of these YouTube videos with Gunnar Stockton, he does not say very much. His answers are very, very to the point. He's not in a bad mood or anything. He just doesn't have much to say. As far as he's concerned, he's already done his talking during the game. He doesn't have to add any message onto that. So when he was asked this week about how Malachi Toliver played, to my ears, it feels like Gunnar gave like the longest answer he has to any question all season long. So if you want to know the full context of just how valuable it was for Toliver to step in and play the way that he did in place of Drew Bobo, the fact that Gunnar gave this extended of an answer on the topic probably tells you that as much as anything. This is Gunnar going back to Saturday night.
Yeah, he was awesome. Malachi's a fighter. He attack practice the way that Drew is a good role model for him. And he did a great job. Heck, we even took snaps in the walkthrough in our suits. I mean, I took my jacket off and he did too. So, we were always preparing and doing everything, and he did a great job.
The second part of that answer is what we call an anecdote. It is a colorful piece of imagery added to give more interesting context to an answer. Gunnar Stockton does not give anecdotes. Gunnar Stockton does not, let me tell you a funny story. Gunnar Stockton does not do a lot of that. But in this particular case, after saying what needed to be said, oh yeah, listen, he followed the template that Drew Bobo had put in place, and he worked really hard in practice. That's usually about all you get from Gunnar Stockton in a situation like that, which once again, it's not his job to talk. It's my job to talk. It's his job to play. So we'll let him play and I'll do the talking. No big deal. I'm not mad at him for not liking to talk. But the point is, Gunnar Stockton usually answers a question in 4 words. In this particular case, after giving you those 4 words, he's like, hey, let me tell you, coming into the stadium, just to make sure we were ready, I took my suit coat off because the team dresses up to come into the stadium. I took my suit coat off. Malachi took his suit coat off, and we did just a couple quarterback center exchanges just to make sure, hey, we still in the right frame of mind? We still in the same vibe? He's giving you an anecdote. He's giving you a party story, a cocktail, hour type story. He's giving you some color. A guy that says very little is wanting to give you a little bit more of an answer of, this is how important this was for me. Yes, as a starting quarterback, I might have been a little bit worried about a center who's getting ready to make his first start, especially given how important this is against this particular opponent. So much so that in our street clothes and our dress clothes, we're doing a little quarterback center exchange one more time just to make sure we were feeling good before we got our uniforms on. That gives you an idea of how significant this was, and the fact that Toliver played the way that he played, and then gives you also a really good picture into why Georgia won this game. So to sum all of this up, we're going to talk a lot about who Georgia might play. In fact, we'll do more of this on the show today. Who Georgia might play in the Sugar Bowl, what might happen for it after that. There is a big sunny horizon on the forefront here for Georgia. But looking back, still pretty fun too. Georgia's the SEC champions. It had to beat Alabama to get there. And if we're being honest, as C.J. Allen said, that win against this Crimson Tide team does make it just a little bit more special. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro. Glad you are with us. However you get to us, live on video, 10 a.m., across all platforms. Radio, Anthem Sports Radio 960 The Ref, podcast, wherever you find them. The original platform, the one it started on, whether it's Apple, Spotify, worldfamousdawgnation.com, however you connect with us. We're just really, really glad that you do, that one of these platforms works for you, and that you find our program each and every day. We are unbelievably blessed because of your participation in what we do here. And great sponsors who help make it all possible, like our friends at ServPro. And in a messy situation, ServPro can do unbelievably good work for you. That's what they live for. Fire damage, water intrusion, all kinds of other catastrophes that are almost beyond my imagination. Well, ServPro has seen it all, done it all, large-scale jobs that encompass multiple city blocks or a home just like yours and everything in between. That's what ServPro is all about. We call them restoration specialists. That means if you've got a messy cleanup that needs to be done, if you've got horrible damage in property that means something to you, our friends from ServPro can get it put back together, cleaned up for you, and get it looking like it never even happened. That is what ServPro is all about. So please find them online. It is servpro.com. That's S-E-R-V, servpro.com. One more time on that, S-E-R-V, servpro.com. They are independently owned and operated. Every single ServPro franchise has someone just as dedicated to a satisfactory outcome for you as you are for yourself. So if you're looking at a messy cleanup, if you're looking at horrible damage that, don't let it ruin your Christmas season, don't let it ruin your new year, I want you to really keep ServPro in mind. I hope you don't need it, but obviously many of you eventually will. And when you do need it, for us here at DawgNation, it was the same way. We had a big water pipe break a couple of years ago. Incredible damage to our studio. The folks we called right away, boom, with ServPro, and they got it done. Online, servpro.com, S-E-R-V, servpro.com for more on that. All right, before we're done today, it's Jake Fromm, and you better believe Jake Fromm is going to be raring to go today because we've had a lot of conversations about this Georgia team, but few have been more enjoyable than for what you're seeing over my shoulder, those of you watching on video, hoisting another SEC championship trophy. How good did that feel? We'll talk to Jake Fromm about all of that in a moment. We'll also talk to Connor Riley about not just that, but also we'll get into the what's coming next part for Georgia. That is on the way here too. But prior to that, let's go around the doghouse board today by our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. And, listen, there are plenty of things in life I get wrong or surprised about, but rarely am I more surprised by something we got some rumblings and grumblings a bit about last week that was not quite confirmed by Kirby Smart on Sunday, but it was not denied by Kirby Smart. The notion that as Georgia moves into the college football playoff, it could regain a player active that I thought was done. I thought Colbie Young was done. I thought the injury ended his Georgia career. In fact, I think we essentially all treated it as, boy, it's a sad thing. Everybody loves Colbie, gave a lot to Georgia, but boy, you hate to see that. Well, heck, maybe all of that was way too premature because on Sunday, speaking about the college football playoff and the Sugar Bowl for the first time, Kirby Smart, who never says anything about an injury, never says anything about an injury, kept the door open for what would be among the more miraculous recoveries I think we've seen. I'm not a medical expert, but my gosh, this seems pretty wild. This is Kirby on Sunday, at least keeping open the possibility that Colbie Young could return at some point during the college football playoff. This is, to me, wild Kirby from Sunday.
Anthony, I don't know. I know we went over some injuries today, and his name came up. I think it would be a stretch, and we're so far off. I was not thinking of being able to get him back when the injury occurred in the initial timeline. There has been some optimism with his rehab and his recovery, but it was more for after the initial game if we were able to advance. But again, I don't know. I think we'll find out over the next 20-something days. We'll find a lot more out.
I mean, once again, I joked earlier about Gunnar Stockton giving like the longest answer he's ever given about Malachi Toliver, which gives you an idea of how important that is. You ask Kirby about an injury, it's like a grunt. It's like it's just like, it's not even intelligible sometimes what he says in response to that. Yeah, he's fine. We're hopeful we'll get him back. In this case, he's giving you some actual information about Colbie Young. Maybe not Sugar Bowl, he says, but it doesn't even rule that out. But maybe after that at some point. Do you know what it would mean for Georgia? What it would mean for this offense if you added Colbie Young back into the mix for this season? I mean, let's not forget how valuable of a player he is. And this is one of the things, when we tell the story about how Georgia has, been what it's been this year, I think the judicious decisions it's made by the transfer receivers it's brought in is a big part of that. Zachariah Branch is not only a very good player, he's an amazing cultural fit for Georgia. I think that Noah Thomas is that way too. I think that Colbie Young is very much that way. Both, Kirby's talked before about the way in which he embodies the leadership they want, but also the valuable nature of what he brings just as a regular football player. In fact, if you want to go back earlier in the season, pre-injury for Colbie, Kirby talked about all the things that he does well. What if you got this back to go along with what Georgia already has for the college football playoff? Let's hear Kirby. This is back in September.
He's a contested catch guy. He's a big guy. He's a weapon on the perimeter blocking. He's a weapon to tackle. So he's hard to get down on the ground. I'm really proud of his energy and his enthusiasm, the way he leads, and his personality. The team takes on his personality.
Yeah. So listen, you love the team taking on his personality, but you also love the fact that, do you want some contested catches? I do. Honestly, a contested catch or two last year against Notre Dame would have made a pretty big difference in that game. Do you want that? I would say I probably do. And the fact that Kirby leaves the door open for it, to me, that sounds, really pretty fun. I'll also mention this. If you think about a template for this being George Pickens a little bit, Pickens had a 52-yard catch in the Alabama game in the 2021 National Championship. He also played against Michigan, had one catch in that game, but had a huge catch against Alabama in that National Championship game, coming back in a semi-miraculous way, from his injury situation there too, playing in just a total of 4 games in the 2021 season. So Georgia's had a version of this before, and against Alabama in that 2021 National Championship game, you were very happy to have George Pickens. And in terms of a value to Georgia, Colbie Young is actually pretty similar to what Pickens' value was back then. I don't know if his NFL futures is bright. I don't know. But in terms of his value to UGA when healthy, I'd put Colbie in a similar category. I really would. And Georgia keeps the door open for Colbie Young's eventual return. I'd say that's a pretty fun storyline as we head towards the college football playoff, whether it's the Sugar Bowl or after that or whenever. I'd say just keep playing until he's healthy to return, and things may work out pretty well for these Georgia Bulldogs. That's fun stuff from Kirby Smart going back to Sunday on that, and that's around the doghouse. Poured today by our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. And speaking of fun stuff, when you're getting ready for a great Christmas party, there's just something to me really wholesome about Christmas, and I would say really wholesome about Georgia-grown companies like Mercier Orchards and the hard cider that they grow from the apples and the fruits that are a part of Mercier Orchards up there in the North Georgia mountains. So if you want to take your Christmas parties and your holiday-themed event up a notch, Mercier Orchards Hard Cider is a great way to do that. There's an entire array of flavors that you can enjoy. And, in some restaurants, you can find it on tap. You can obviously get it in a can. And so as you're getting ready to make your holiday events, your Christmas events, the best they can possibly be, my hearty encouragement to you is to make Mercier Orchards Hard Cider a part of that. So as you're out shopping, your favorite supermarket, your local beverage stores, things along those lines, please ask for it. And oftentimes when you ask, if you don't see it, because it is a new category of beverage for many people, this is a really fun entrant into that beverage category. So for some people, Mercier Orchards Hard Cider is a new thing. And so if you look for it and don't see it, just simply ask for it. And what we're finding is, as folks do ask for it, more and more beverage stores are stocking it. More and more supermarkets are giving it some shelf space, and it becomes a greater opportunity for what we really want here. This Georgia-grown company to have its own chance to grow. The same way the apples and the fruits and all the delicious offerings from Mercier Orchards are growing here every year, Mercier Orchards Hard Cider can also grow. And people can enjoy a great taste of something that's really a big part of the agricultural scene here in Georgia. Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. It's pronounced Mercier. It's spelled Mercier. Just search Mercier Orchards Hard Cider to find out more about this today. Love to have Mercier Orchards Hard Cider pouring around the doghouse for us here on DawgNation Daily. Okay, before we're done, it's Jake Fromm. Plenty to talk about with him. Also, coaching change around the SEC. We'll get to some of that here coming up in a moment. But for now, on everything to do with what's next for Georgia as they win the SEC, now look ahead to the college football playoff, let's talk to Connor Riley today here on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Connor, let me start with where we just were. First of all, great to have you a part of the show. I don't think you can say this too loudly. If Colbie Young plays again for Georgia this year, that's a medical marvel, at least to my rudimentary understanding of his original injury. But it's also a huge get for UGA because this offense has actually been humming along pretty good here for the most part as of late, finding a lot more success with the running game. But Colbie Young is one of that group's best players if he can play. Boy, how much would adding him back into the mix add to Georgia? And I don't know, the fact that he even wants to return, I think gives you an idea of what Georgia thinks it can do in this postseason. There had been some rumblings about this last week, but what did you make of Kirby Smart not throwing cold water on that really at all?
It seems like every December we're sort of wondering, is Colbie Young going to be able to come back and play for this Georgia team? Obviously a very different situation a year ago, but Kirby Smart not throwing cold water on that fact this week. And I know he maybe thinks it's more likely for the semifinal than the Sugar Bowl itself, but I'm not a doctor, but what difference is, 6-7 days in that regard from where he's going to be from the rehab that he's already putting in there? It's not dissimilar in my mind to in 2020. Now, I know we like to forget that year, but Jalen Waddle suffered a significant injury in the middle of that season, similar to what Young did. And he came back and he was able to play in the national championship game. And obviously different timelines there. So we've seen something like this before. And I think this Georgia team could really use Colbie Young. Noah Thomas dealing with a back injury at this point in time. That's why he only played one snap on Saturday. And even with Noah Thomas out there and fully healthy, it's clear to me that this Georgia offense is different with Colbie Young on the field. There was a level of trust there that Colbie Young and Gunnar Stockton had developed that I just don't think is there with Noah Thomas. And so even if he is not the same version that we saw prior to that injury, if he's able to stretch the field and give Georgia another vertical target, I think that does allow Georgia's offense to play a little bit differently, because while it executed well, in my opinion, on Saturday, I think you also saw some of the limitations with this offense. And as we get deeper and deeper into the college football playoff, if you have more outs, if you have more ways to beat teams, that's going to help you. And I do think even a somewhat compromised, obviously not 100% Colbie Young, does give Georgia another option that it can work with and play with. And I think that is huge moving forward for what this team could do as it tries to get to a national championship.
So a lot of good vibes right now. The potential return of Colbie, an example of that. And maybe I'm just too colored by the moment, but I don't think there, in my mind anyway, is any doubt this current version of Georgia is just remarkably improved from the Georgia team that was going into New Orleans for last year's Sugar Bowl. I just think I think it's remarkably different year over year how much better this Georgia team is. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think the big thing that we can't overlook is that Gunnar Stockton was making his first career start in New Orleans a year ago. And I know it's easy to dump on Carson Beck. Things haven't gone the way I think he anticipated, even though they got into the playoff this year. Georgia last year was a better team with Carson Beck at quarterback than first career start Gunnar Stockton. But spinning it forward to this year, that pays off for Georgia. Gunnar Stockton's the only quarterback in the college football field that has previously started a playoff game there, and he's gotten all those reps and they've accumulated. So I think that helps in that regard. The other big difference, this team is committed to running the football and stopping the run in a way that last year's team wasn't. And I think that just makes things a lot tougher, where you and I were sitting next to each other during the SEC championship game, and we said to each other, every time Alabama runs the football, it feels like a win for Georgia. Now, obviously, I think Georgia's going to play better rushing teams moving forward, but I don't see a rushing attack, certainly on Georgia's side of the bracket, that gives me a lot of concern. And so if you're able to do that and you're able to force teams to be one-dimensional, and conversely, if you're able to get up early in games, you're able to convert and get first down, something Georgia didn't do a great job of in the second half of that game on Saturday. But I think when you're able to stop the run and you're able to run the football, you're able to dictate the terms of the game a lot better. And I think that, again, I mentioned this earlier, it gives you more outs and more ways to win. Whereas when Georgia stepped on the field against Notre Dame last year, we knew there were only like a few possible paths to victory there. And when you do what they did at the end of the first half and then give up a kickoff return to start the second half, it just made the task of coming back and winning that game all the more difficult. With this team this year, we've seen them win in a variety of ways. We've seen them win high-scoring games. We've seen them win low-scoring games. And so the fact that this Georgia team has so many different ways that it can go about winning is the biggest reason why it is a different team than the one that played Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl last season.
Okay, so if I feel the need to pump the brakes on my unbridled enthusiasm, I would do so this way. I really have no idea what's about to happen in this college football playoff, and I'll give you one piece of evidence on this, or context for this. We're calling the potential matchup for Georgia and Ole Miss. Well, that's the easy draw for Georgia, so to speak. But we got to remember, Georgia needed a 17-0 run, which is not the easiest thing to call on command, just to beat Ole Miss. Really, only a few weeks ago. I know Lane Kiffin's not there, but the rest of the coaches are going to be there. I'm not saying I'm scared of Ole Miss. I'm saying if the so-called easy draw for Georgia is a team that it essentially barely beat and in its own stadium a few weeks ago, it does give you an idea that this playoff, as good as I think that Georgia feels like it's playing right now, is about to be a little bit of a pinball machine, because honestly, I think most of us were caught off guard by the fact that even with Georgia's issues a year ago, that it lost to Notre Dame. I like where Georgia is. I have no idea what to expect from this college ball playoff.
The margins in college football are thinner than ever. And so, while yes, I think if you're of the 4 quarterfinal teams and you got to pick your opponent, let's say they all higher seeds win, you can maybe make a case for Oklahoma because their offense is such a train wreck right now. But I think you'd be pretty happy, especially if you're a Georgia fan with the history of Alabama, you would take Ole Miss in that regard. Now, maybe Tulane finds a way to win and upset Ole Miss. I think one thing that we can't discount when it comes to this Ole Miss team, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, Gunnar Stockton making his first career start. And yes, he had reps against Texas. There's an immeasurable drop-off, in my opinion, from Pete Golding, how he's going to call a game, how he's going to get that team ready, how he's going to get that team prepared, compared to where Lane Kiffin is. And you can think whatever you want of Lane Kiffin as a person, but in terms of on Saturdays, in games, what he is able to do, there is just no world where Pete Golding is an improvement on that right now. And frankly, in my mind, even close to what Lane Kiffin is capable of doing, especially when you go back and look at the comments Kirby Smart made about Lane Kiffin and the way he's able to manage and dictate games. So again, to your point, I think we're both in lockstep on this. This is a game where we're taking the 10,000-foot view. Yeah, you like Georgia's path. But when we get to the week of this game and you see the talent that Ole Miss has and the way they've played this season, and you look at the way how impressively they bounced back after that Georgia loss the next week at Oklahoma, who also made the playoff, and the way I think this team in particular handled the distractions down the stretch that came with Lane Kiffin and all he was flirting with, winning against Florida, winning against Mississippi State, all white teams Georgia also beat as well. I think that this team is going to give Georgia some issues, and they're going to have to work through them, even if I think this Georgia team, specifically, obviously, this Georgia defense, is playing significantly better than what we saw against Ole Miss back in October.
So because it's such a crapshoot, I'm going to have some fun with my prediction. I believe Georgia is going to become what I can only assume is the first team to ever play 12 games against SEC opponents. I believe it's going to beat Ole Miss in the quarterfinal, beat Texas A&M in the national semifinal, and I believe the national championship game is going to be Georgia-Alabama round 3.
You're SEC homer. You're doing a lot of, on our Go With The Flow show, you faced allegations this year of not being the SEC homer. You are certainly pushing back against those. I'm not quite willing to go that far. I do think they're going to play Ole Miss in round 1. I think they're going to have to play a couple of Big Ten teams to win and to get to the national championship. I think they're going to play Ohio State, though. I have a lot of questions about Ohio State, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, when you consider what they've done against Texas and Indiana this season. And then you look at the other side there. I wouldn't discount Texas Tech just yet, but I'm choosing to believe in this Indiana team and what they can do. So I think if Georgia is going to win a national championship, they're going to have to go through the Big Ten. I don't quite know that you're going to get 12 SEC games this season.
So in all seriousness, let me try to give you at least some logic for the prediction that I just made. In the case of Indiana, this is about me. I was not there for the wedding on them, and I'm not going to be there for the funeral. You know what I'm saying? Like I was not there on them a year ago. They have fairly effectively proven me wrong. They've got 2 very significant wins this year at Oregon and Ohio State on a neutral on Saturday. They have certainly proven me wrong for my doubts a year ago, but I'm too far down the road on not being in on them to change my mind now. And I do think to a degree, even though I was somewhat skeptical of Alabama over the last couple of weeks of the regular season, I think there's a little bit of an Ohio State from last year vibe, although this Bama team is not as talented as that Ohio State team was, that people are now going to want to throw them out completely because of, how they played against Georgia, a la Ohio State last year against Michigan. But the truth is that was a banged-up Alabama team that might – I'm not an expert on their health status – that might have a little more time to get healthy on this. At the very least, I think going into the playoff, they are favored, by the way, at Oklahoma, despite the fact that Oklahoma won in Tuscaloosa earlier this year. I do think there's at least a whiff of what happened to Ohio State a year ago, that Alabama is more dangerous going into the playoff than they are currently being given credit for.
My issue with Alabama, and I do agree with you. I see a world where they beat Oklahoma, they find a way to beat Indiana, and once you're in the college football playoff semifinal, I think anything can happen at that point. You've clearly proven your mettle. I also wouldn't be surprised if this team lost again to Oklahoma. And watching them on Saturday, Oklahoma's got a very good defense. I think Georgia's is probably a little bit more talented. But they put so much of the game on Ty Simpson's shoulders. And look, maybe they get J.M. Miller back. We'll see about my namesake, Kevin Riley, there as well in the running back field. But even with those guys healthy, Alabama just has not been a good running team under Kalen DeBoer. Ryan Grubb is now back in college football because he couldn't run the football a year ago with the Seattle Seahawks. And when you're that one-dimensional on offense and you're merely adequate on defense, that was not a vintage Alabama defense we saw on Saturday. I mentioned outs and ways you can win. I feel like Alabama has a very limited scope in terms of the ways that they can win games. They play a lot of similar games where they're probably going to give up between 20 and 27 points. They gave up 28 on Saturday. They're going to try and ideally score between 21 and 27 points. They're going to play a lot of NFL style games. They won a lot of those close games early in the season. You think South Carolina, Missouri, Vanderbilt, the score got a little lopsided there because of some late turnovers. I think Alabama, and we saw this on Saturday, they're very limited in the ways they can win. And if things don't go well for Ty Simpson like they didn't, I do wonder just about how feasible it is for this team to go on a deep run. And while I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing the national championship because just Alabama Devil Magic, I also won't be shocked if their season is over before the first college football playoff games start on Saturday.
Real quick, because we're going to get Jake Fromm here in a second. I gave you credit for this on Sunday. You really nailed the possibility of Miami making the field when we spoke on Tuesday night when the final top 25 came out leading into championship weekend. Overall, I know it's been a hot debate. I actually don't have a huge problem with the playoff field as it's constituted. I think you can listen to several different arguments for like Notre Dame's inclusion, someone else's exclusion. I argued that, hey, maybe Georgia should have the opportunity to eliminate Alabama after beating it as badly as it did. That would have certainly been fun for Georgia fans. But even Georgia being seeded third compared to second, given the draw that Georgia got because of that seeding, I don't have a huge problem with any of this.
I do think that Georgia should have been the 2 seed. I think the committee should have chosen to reward Georgia winning the SEC as opposed to leaving Ohio State there at 2. But to your point, I think Georgia gets a more favorable draw because of it, and you don't have to deal with the looming perspective of playing Carson Beck in your first college football playoff game after nearly a month off. I agree with the committee's decision to keep Alabama in. I don't think that Miami and Notre Dame should have been rewarded because they didn't have to play on conference championship Saturday. I think where the committee really erred was in the penultimate rankings that they did what they did and they had Miami behind Notre Dame, where even though we knew their resumes were complete at that point in time, you could come away thinking, okay, Notre Dame might be safe because Miami doesn't play and there's no opportunity for them to move up. And then ultimately they do what is right and reward the head-to-head. I, like you probably are, am deeply bothered by Notre Dame opting out of a bowl game. You can tell me participation trophies. You can tell me bowl games don't matter. I think that's lame in general. And I think you look at specifically Georgia, and I wrote about this yesterday, the reps that young players get in those bowl practices. You think of a guy like a CJ Allen, a Monroe Freeling, guys who were on that 2023 team that they could have been just as jilted after they fell from 1 to 6 in the final college football playoff rankings. They went through bowl practice. They got better. They got real game reps, albeit against a depleted Florida State team that quit on that bowl game as well. You look at where Georgia and Florida State are since that bowl decision. Georgia's back in the college football playoff for a second straight year. Florida State has had back-to-back losing seasons. I do worry that if and Marcus Freeman, I think, is a good coach and generally does things the right way. And I think that's what makes the Notre Dame decision so puzzling there. So I think that for Notre Dame to do this, yes, it sucks. you were the 12th best team in college football this year, or the 11th best team in college football this year. It's not like you were the 5 seed like in years past that Georgia has had to deal with arguing to try and get in on that basis. You had games against Miami and Texas A&M where you had chances to win both of those, and you failed to do so in that regard. I have no issue with what the committee did at the end of the day in terms of going Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame.
So we got to get Jake Fromm. Let me just give you one tiny thing here really quick. This is a scorching hot take that nobody asked for. If it wasn't the Pop-Tart Bowl, I believe that Notre Dame would play in it. I kind
of agree.
I think that Notre Dame recognizes the Pop-Tart Bowl for what it is. I'm not anti-Pop-Tart necessarily. Much like the mayonnaise, all that kind of stuff, they recognize it as ritualistic humiliation for people who take college football seriously. And so therefore, I think they're smart enough not to want to go be a part of it.
I think that there were Notre Dame fans that for the last 3 weeks had been texting Miami fans, hey, get ready to go enjoy the Pop-Tart Bowl. And then faced with the reality of playing in the Pop-Tart Bowl themselves, they opted out. If this is the Holiday Bowl, this is the Independence Bowl, I think, or not the Independence Bowl, no one would want to spend Christmas in Shreveport.
But just something that doesn't involve, clownish behavior like, mascots being, cannibalized. Anything other than that, I think Notre Dame probably plays. Kind of great stuff. Can't wait to read more for me at DawgNation.com. We appreciate you being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro here today.
As always, it's a pleasure.
Great stuff there from Connor Riley. We're going to get the great guests continue to roll here as well. A guy who was watching very closely from down the sideline on Saturday as Georgia got that win against Alabama in the SEC championship by, talk about perfect symmetry here, the same score that this man also got an SEC championship, 28-7. How about Jake Fromm? It's part of a Kruger Fresh Take here today on DawgNation Daily. And Jake, you and I talked about this a lot last week. We just talked about on the show a little earlier. The job that Malachi Toliver does stepping in for Drew Boban, now you see more of the intricacies of that than I do, but in my mind, I'm like, boy, we're not thinking about Toliver at all during the game. It's almost like the umpire in a baseball game. If you're not thinking about him, then he must be doing his job okay. The fact that once the game began, I stopped thinking about Malachi Toliver, I mean, to me, that's sort of all I need to know to lead me to believe he must have been having a very good football game.
Yeah, hey Brandon, what's going on? Yeah, you're exactly right. Much like a cornerback, when you don't hear them, don't see them involved a whole lot, you know that they're doing their job, they're locking their guy down. Man, and that's exactly what Malachi did, man. He came in, he operated, he got guys in the right spot, on the right schedule, and man was held up very good in pass protection. Let Gunner be able to operate, scoring 28 points. Yes, one of the touchdowns was on a short field after the block punt, but man, anytime you score 28 points, especially against a good football team in an SEC championship game, man, that should lead to a win, and they were able to get that done.
Well, speaking of the block punt, I don't know how well you know Cole Spear personally. I remember seeing him play in high school, and people should know that Cole Spear was a dominant high school player on both sides of the ball. Pretty much anybody who comes to Georgia is going to be. And yet, for whatever reason, the wide receiver position has not quite worked out. Maybe it could have this year. I guess Kirby said had a little bit of an injury that maybe held him back in fall camp. But it's obviously very competitive to be a part of the Georgia offense, the Georgia defense. And so a guy like this has made a name for himself as kind of a special teams maven. But goodness gracious, no one's ever come up bigger in a spot like that, completely changing the tone and the tenor of the game right from the start. And essentially rewriting the story of his Georgia career by doing so. And I thought the way that Kirby talked about this after the game on Saturday was great. The other players were obviously effusive in their praise, as you knew they would be. What does it mean for a guy like this he's always been the sort of player that plugged in Georgia fans like, boy, it's good to have a guy like Cole Spears on special teams. But now he's a part of Georgia lore. I mean, what does it mean for a guy like that to have a moment like that in an SEC championship game?
Yeah, man, that's just a testament to him, his work ethic, his character. I mean, football players show up on special teams, whether it's in college, especially in the NFL. If you're just a football player, have a nose for the ball and just understand, body positioning, you're tough, you're physical, you can run, you enjoy hitting folks, and you're a smart football player. Special teams is a great spot for you, man. And it's a great spot, man, to get an opportunity to make a big time monumental game-changing play, was exactly what he did. I can't believe that Kirby was kind of talking up about blocking this punt before the game ever started.
Wow.
Man, people were sending me kind of that after the game, about his interview, and he was kind of talking about, making a big play on special teams. And that's crazy to me that he was already calling his shot before it happened. I'm just glad that there wasn't a penalty for Cole being offsides on this one, especially against Alabama in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Okay, so that's interesting. Let's do this out loud here for a minute. So I also heard that Chris Fowler on the broadcast, I haven't gone back and rewatched the game yet, I haven't had time to, but before that block punt also foreshadowed, I believe, a little bit by saying, hey, there's always a big special teams moment when these two teams play. So we know that coach and broadcasters speak before the game.
Yep.
I'm honestly just writing this story in my head as we're
Yeah.
doing this now. But you almost wonder if Fowler saying that, did Colbie in these very private conversations that go on, I almost wondered, did Georgia really know they had something here? And that's maybe what led Fowler to also foreshadow this right before it happened too.
Yeah, must have. Must have seen something on film. Man, they must have been repping it throughout the week, and they really loved it. They thought, maybe Cole had a great jump. There was something there that they saw that they were able to time up. They saw something in the punt block protection, and man, they were going after it, and they felt very confident about it. And yeah, these conversations that happen, with the booth commentators, behind closed doors, and man, they're a great spot to get some nuggets, which is why they do them, so they can offer that kind of insight up there in the booth. And can't believe Colbie kind of gave up the goods, but man, he must have been feeling good about it, and they were able to make it happen. Almost got the first one, but got the second one there, which was incredible.
So how about this stat, by the way, we're showing this on the screen. So there have been 12 blocks, whether it be PAT, field goal, punt, in SEC championship history. Georgia's played in the game a lot, but this is still an amazing stat. They've got 7 of the 12 blocks in SEC championship game history, dating back to, obviously, to Corey Bryant, whose punt block in 2002 changed that game, turned out to be a Georgia blowout, then everything since then. That's a pretty odd statistical footnote that Georgia's had more than half the blocks of kicks in SEC championship game history.
Yeah, and should be 8 of 13 with Tyler Simmons. So, I mean, hey, I don't know what kind of knack that is that we have, but man, we have it. We get after it, apply a lot of pressure on special teams. And if you're able to make those kind of game-changing plays on special teams, your chances of winning, your winning percentage just shoots through the roof. And, I don't know. That's just a good little nugget there, and anything helps.
At least in that building, if nothing else, when it comes to Tyler Simmons, that's a great response. We're going to ask you more here in a moment. Let me also remind folks, it's our Kroger Fresh Take with Jake Fromm here today on DawgNation Daily. And get ready for Christmas. Kroger's going to help you do all of that. You can find out more online, Kroger.com/holiday. Kroger.com/holiday. You're thinking about good food, beverages, all the trappings, you got gifts, little stocking stuffer type stuff, anything like that. Kroger, a great place for that. I like Christmas candy. I like the Hershey's Santas. I like the Reese's Christmas trees. I like all of that. And you can get all of it at your local Kroger. So find out everything you need to know today online. Kroger.com/holiday. That is Kroger.com/holiday. Jake, I always love asking you about the quarterback position. We were just talking about this a moment ago. So a year ago at this time, Gunner had played the role of hero against Texas. But my goodness, it is a tall ask to say, hey, your first ever start is going to be in a college football playoff game, Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. By the way, it's going to turn out to be a very strange game, different than it was initially supposed to be. And I thought that Gunner handled that just fine a year ago. Frankly, I didn't think that Gunner played poorly at all. Obviously, Georgia didn't win it, but I didn't think that Gunner was necessarily the problem last year. But now you fast forward 365 days later. Can you help us quantify just how different it is to be Gunner Stockton now, the only returning quarterback who started a playoff game a year ago, and a guy who's got more than a full season now under his belt? How much different does Gunner probably feel this December than he would have felt in December a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, he should feel a lot more confident. He's got a great football team that he's playing with right now. That's playing at a high level in all 3 phases. He's able to throw the ball and dish the ball around to some really good playmakers. Nate Frazier, who had an excellent game in the SEC championship game. Zachariah Branch. Let's get Noah Thomas healthy here in this one. The tight end position's been playing well. And this defense is really coming into their own and really settling in and playing some high caliber football right now. So, man, if I'm Gunner, I'm feeling a lot more confident, but with the confidence kind of comes a little bit of pressure to perform, right? There's higher expectations now because you've done it. This team should make a push to win a national championship this year. So it's kind of balanced. It's like, yeah, I feel better about what I'm doing. I feel more confident about what I'm doing, but also the expectations are higher for this football team. So it's kind of battling that right there. But man, Gunner does a great job of staying very level set. He's got a great group of people around him, and he's just about the work, man. He just dives in and focuses on the work and the process, and it just takes it one day at a time.
Quick follow, we'll let you go. We also heard from Kirby Smart on Sunday. There's at least some chance before this playoff is done that maybe Colbie Young could also return too. Maybe Sugar Bowl, if not that, maybe later. I mean, for a guy that makes contested catches and just sort of a third down, red zone, easy go-to guy, how big would that be for Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, that would be absolutely huge. He's going to kind of take a lot of eyes on defense over his way. Big body target who's had a lot of success this year. I mean, he was the guy we were throwing hitch routes and stop routes to, and he would catch him at 6 or 8, 9 yards, and he would take him to 15 or 20 because he's breaking tackles. That's how strong this guy is. And he's just a presence out there on the football field for him to be able to come back. Gives Gunner another body to throw to, and some guy he's had a great rapport with throughout the course of the season. So, man, if he could come back, that would be a huge thing for this offense.
Jay, great stuff. Merry Christmas to you and your family. It's great to talk to you here. We'll look forward to doing that more as we get closer to this game between Georgia and whoever it ends up playing, either Ole Miss or Tulane, and then anything that happens after that. Thanks for your insight. Fun to see you on Saturday, and great to watch Georgia have the confetti fall on it once again in an SEC championship. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Merry Christmas. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Yeah, Merry Christmas and go Dogs. Two pretty fun phrases to use right there for sure.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, I mean, you love all that. Just really good analysis and really good stuff, and a really top-notch conversation when you're thinking about Georgia winning the SEC, getting ready for the college football playoff, and everything else after that. Interesting SEC topics also coming up here, too, as a part of an SEC Through. Let me, though, give a shout-out to our friends at Georgia Spa Company before we get there. I'm telling you right now, if you want to think about a great way to reward yourself here this Christmas season, we think our friends from Georgia Spa Company have got something for you on that. No better way to upgrade your home right now, maybe, than to add one of these gorgeous spas. Think about, Clark Griswold wanted the pool in his house for Christmas. Well, you can be your own version of that. I don't know if you still get a Christmas bonus or not. I don't know how much Christmas bonuses are still a thing as they were back in the 1980s. But either way, we think adding whether it be a lap pool or one of these hot tubs, one of these spas, maybe a sauna, something like that from Georgia Spa Company would be a great way to do this. And the great brands they're working with give you an amazing array of options. Hot spring spas, Caldera spas, endless pools, Tylo saunas, so much more. You can be perfectly relaxed in your home, essentially turning your home into almost like a resort. They're going to give you a chance to do that. So they got you covered on everything you need on that. They got locations all across North Georgia. You can check them out online, georgiaspacompany.com. That is georgiaspacompany.com for more on that today. They've served 35,000 customers. They've got thousands of 5-star reviews. That means they're taking good care of folks, and they want to take good care of you. So we love having Georgia Spa Company here on DawgNation Daily. All right, let's get ready to do our SEC Through, and let's start with the Heisman finalist announced yesterday. An SEC player did get his finals candidacy announced. It was not Gunner Stockton. By the time it was all said and done, we didn't expect it to be Gunner. I do think that Gunner had a chance, but it was always going to be a little bit of a long shot for him. Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back, obviously the two Big Ten quarterbacks, Julian Sayin, Fernando Mendoza, and then Diego Pavia did get, representing the SEC, a chance to go. I think that Fernando Mendoza is going to win this. Listen, I think that Pavia probably had a chance, but given the fact it's the old line about best player and the best team, I don't know that Indiana's the best team, but they are ranked number one. They are undefeated. Mendoza is the quarterback. His numbers are not really in keeping. None of the quarterbacks this year would have been. His numbers are not really in keeping with past winners on this, but he is a good player, and Indiana's obviously had a great season to this point, and this is just the way that goes. Mendoza's going to win. All the guys have had in their own way good seasons. And listen, in the case of Diego Pavia, it has been a very entertaining career. The Heisman Trophy goes to, as it says, the most outstanding player. And if you think about the word, I don't mean to be like the word police here, but if you think about outstanding player, what that means is who stands out. Well, very few have stood out more than Diego Pavia. He is just a a magnet for attention. That's just the way that goes. So obviously that's helped his Heisman candidacy, and he's going to be there in New York. Won't win it, but he will be there, and probably a deserved honor for him. On the other end of the spectrum of the SEC, you've got some programs firing coaches, looking for replacements, and South Carolina has targeted its next offensive coordinator. Kendall Briles, coming over from TCU, is going to be that guy. For Shane Beamer, probably a little bit like Will Muschamp before him, one of the issues that he's had is settling on the offensive coordinator that he can keep and have success with. Obviously, Mike Shula did not turn out to be that guy this year. Dowell Loggins was okay the previous year, but then Loggins takes another job. Had some issues at OC prior to that. Really settling in and having the offensive coordinator you want to have has not always worked out great for South Carolina. But I think in the eyes of most, this will probably be considered a pretty big-time hire. I do think it gives South Carolina a chance to be upgraded offensively next year, something that probably needs to be. I think they thought that Shula was going to be a pretty big hire. He'd worked with Cam Newton, the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. I think they thought they had made a pretty big hire. And sometimes things just don't work out the way you think they were going to. And I believe that's what turned out to be the case for Shula here this year. In fact, if he was better, the entire season for South Carolina probably would have been better. As it turns out, back to the drawing board there on that, making what's probably a pretty aggressive move. Interesting to think that both schools in South Carolina, I guess, Clemson and the University of South Carolina, will now both have former TCU offensive coordinators as their offensive coordinators. Briles now at South Carolina, and Lincoln Riley's brother at Clemson. Just an interesting footnote, I guess, on that. But South Carolina does target its new OC. It is going to be Kendall Briles moving over from TCU. Tennessee is now looking for a new defensive coordinator, as Tim Banks reportedly got fired yesterday. And obviously we said this last week that there's going to be this big carousel spinning. We've already seen that with head coaches in the SEC, and the next big thing is going to be stuff relating to coordinators, and there's probably still more of that to come. Tennessee, for instance, going on the open market now for a defensive coordinator, obviously after a disappointing 8-4 season a year ago. I guess there is at least some chance. Now, this is not reporting. I'm just thinking out loud. There's at least some chance that a guy like Travaris Robinson could at least be mentioned on this. There's at least some chance of that. I certainly have no reason to think that he's going to go, nor do I have any reason to think that he's not a candidate for somebody else's defensive coordinator job. But Georgia's had a good season. It's got good coaches. We always see Georgia coaches in demand. We could see a guy like T-Rob in demand here, or maybe some other job too. That's just part of it. But it's also one of those things where Tennessee's going to have some money to spend. They clearly want to be – they were very good defensively in 2024. Big step back this year. Most of that I thought was talent-related. I mean, I have no idea if Tim Banks is a good coach or not. I really don't. But clearly they got to be better. They were pretty atrocious defensively, so it's not a huge surprise they're making a move. But a big job like this being open going to create some more reverberations other places. We'll see who this does impact. And we don't have a fancy graphic for this. I'll also say this, that when it comes to Tennessee losing a defensive coordinator, it's probably also interesting to note that LSU looks like it's going to keep its defensive coordinator. Blake Baker was a candidate for the Tulane job, and that's a big enough group of five job that a guy like that would have taken it. But this does look like a pretty big win for Lane Kiffin right now, that he may hold on to Baker. Looks like Tulane is hiring Will Hall, the former Southern Miss coach, who was in a really rough situation at Hattiesburg. But looks like Will Hall is the new Tulane coach, which would, at least for now, will lead you to believe that Tulane, not taking Baker means LSU is going to keep him. Now, speaking of the college football playoff, Tulane's going to take on Ole Miss. There's also news this week as it relates to Ole Miss, and this could eventually have an impact on Georgia. So we knew that Charlie Weiss Jr., the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, going with Lane Kiffin to LSU, was given permission to come back and coach the college football playoff. Now we know more coaches on the offensive side of the ball who left with Lane are going to come back too. So it's 4 total assistants. One of those is tight end coach Joe Cox, who you know, George McDonald, the wide receivers coach, and Dane Stevens, the assistant quarterbacks coach, and Sawyer Jordan, the wide receivers coach, one of the wide receivers coaches. They're all, how many offensive coaches do they have, by the way? They're all coming back to work in the college football playoff. So if you're a Georgia fan wondering how similar the version of Ole Miss you could see in the Sugar Bowl, if it is indeed Ole Miss beating Tulane in the first round of the college football playoff, how similar that could be. Well, now Charlie Weiss Jr. plus 4 of his assistants all coming back to work, essentially the entirety of the offensive staff, minus Lane Kiffin. This is probably a good thing for Ole Miss. I still think you probably miss Lane Kiffin, probably, but there is a good bit of institutional knowledge coming back. And I think it also, maybe even more importantly, gives you a little bit of an idea that there's a stabilization now for Ole Miss after a lot of hot tempers related to Lane Kiffin wanting to have his cake and eat it too, wanting to leave, but also wanting to coach throughout the playoff. Ole Miss saying we can't have a Manchurian candidate running our program. Now it seems like everybody's calming down. You know, Lane Kiffin reportedly originally had said was, if you're not on the plane with me to leave to go to Baton Rouge, then you can't coach here. And so now that's settled down, and he's not trying to take the whole coaching staff away, going to let some of these guys coach during the playoff. It also has the potential of ruining some of the edge. You know, you got to imagine Pete Golding would have wanted to sell the whole thing about, you know, Lane Kiffin didn't want to be here. We don't want him here. But now they're borrowing some of Lane Kiffin's assistant coaches. It takes away one of the big pregame speech, things that Pete Golding might have to use there. So I don't know, do with that what you will, but it looks like Ole Miss is going to get a few coaches back for the college football playoff. So perhaps good news for them, and maybe of note for Georgia. If you're thinking about that potential matchup in the Sugar Bowl, we'll make that your SEC through. And before we get ready to go today, let me also give a shout out to our friends at Daytona Beach. I love Daytona Beach. You know, growing up, so many great memories for me of Georgia football. Obviously grew up being a big Georgia fan. I've also got really great memories of growing up around Daytona Beach too. It's just an awesome thing. Went there every summer. We'd pack up the car, make what for a kid at the time felt like a long drive, but I couldn't wait to get there. You couldn't wait to see the landmarks stop popping up. And when you got a little older, you realize, it's actually not that hard to get here. And in fact, from Atlanta, you can fly there. There's an international airport that goes right to it. And when we talk about Daytona Beach here on the show, for me, it's so much fun to see a lot of the landmarks that I grew up enjoying. The Ponce Inlet Lighthouse, the Main Street Pier, the 23 miles of shoreline, and really a lot of the great restaurants that I went to, you know, when I was a kid, they're still there, but also the way in which it's grown from a cuisine standpoint, you know, some of the most respected restaurants in the entire state right there in the Daytona Beach area. It's just a really great place for a winter getaway. I love winter getaways. I've said many times before, my goal is to be tan during the winter. It's very important to me. It is a pretty good indication of how life is going if I'm tan during the winter. So if you want your own wintertime tan, our friends at Daytona Beach are going to show you how you can get it. So please check out DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. That is DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. When I say hotel deals, I mean it. You may find out there are better savings you might realize when you think about a great winter beach getaway, which I know you need. Daytona Beach can be a great way to get it. So check out DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals for more on that today. For our golden shoes, we're continuing to celebrate so many of you who have spent so much time with us. We're going to try our best, and I'm disorganized. I'm kind of a mess, but I'm going to really try to make sure we get all of these on the screen at some point in time, or at least as many of them as I'm capable of doing. In fact, today, our guy Coleman reaches out to say, I think I watch too much DawgNation, if there is such a thing. He also checks in on YouTube as one of our top 0.1% of viewers watching 459 videos from DawgNation here this year. Coleman, I thank you so much. We would say there's no such thing as too much DawgNation, but certainly we are grateful for as much time as you're able to give us because we love talking Georgia football, and we got to have people to talk about it with. And Coleman, we are thankful that you were one of those guys. So we're going to give you a golden shoe for that today. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you reaching out and sharing that wonderful designation there from YouTube on that. Lousy, stinking Gators, long time since they've beaten Georgia. How about 1,858 days? We call that our Gator Hater Updater. We love giving it to you, and we give it to you today here on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. Thank you for being here today, and we hope you'll come back and see us again tomorrow. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. Show up on time, doing the work that's promised, the price promise. You can trust them on all of that today. So we are glad you are with us here for this R.S. Andrews Cool Down, and glad to talk to you about some Georgia football here right now. We are not going to go crazy long today, though, because I got to rest my voice here a little bit. It's been doing better. Everybody says it is. People are talking about it. But we want to make sure, after the work we've done to get it back where it is, we don't give it all back. By the way, big Christmas party tonight, or more, I guess, better stated in this case, holiday party with our friends from SCORE Atlanta. Kaylee Manziel and I are going to be there. That's going to be good. Our buddy Rusty Manziel will be there. So big doings tonight. Get a chance to dress up a little bit. Looking forward to that. Always fun to be able to do holiday-themed events. Brodo Baggins says, how cold is it in Tuscaloosa? Yeah, temperature check on Tuscaloosa, -3 right now. They are frigid there in Tuscaloosa. And so if you missed the beginning of the show, we took this out for a spin yesterday. See what kind of response we got. Not bad engagement numbers, just for the first time out there. So I would say print the merch. I feel like this one has a chance to have some staying power. I do. Thank you for remembering that. D. Nelly, going back to some old Georgia receiving, names from receivers past. I did see that Jaden Hazelwood is now working on a hip-hop career. Jermaine Burton, who is, by the way, a protege of our guy Terrence Edwards. I know Jermaine and Georgia fans have had a little bit of a tough relationship, but obviously we love Terrence Edwards, and he's, closely tied to Jermaine Burton. Burton did get let go by the Cincinnati Bengals. We did see that. Spencer Clark on the subject of Zayden Walker making a push. Yeah, he ain't got a sack at the end of the SEC championship. Zayden Walker may be, he may be him. Do people still say that? Zayden Walker may be him. There's a chance that's the case. Let's see what else. Yeah, Wayne Haynes in here having a fun time at the Alabama receiver's expense. How about Walt, who checked, Walt Digi, who checks in to say that DawgNation was his number one in the top 0.3%. Walt, that's incredible. Thank you so much, Walt. I mean it, y'all. It is mind blowing to me, just how privileged I feel to be able to speak to you all about Georgia football. Really, really is. It's awesome. We love what we do. I love the connection we have with each other. It's one of the reasons why we love sitting here doing the R.S. Andrews Cool Down, because it gives me a chance to, and some of you I get a chance to meet in person, but the interaction we have during this time, it's just a great thing. A great thing. Spencer Clark also enjoying Gabe Harris. Yeah, we love Gabe too. Breadman Mitch said the Roderick Robinson touchdown meant something to him. Listen, we know what these players go through, working hard at practice and, competing for playing time. And in life, you're just sometimes going to have setbacks. You are sometimes going to have it not quite work out for you. And as anybody's ever told you, and anybody's ever told me, and we're now some of us old enough to know this for ourselves, what do you do when those setbacks occur? How do you respond to that? And in the case of, Roderick Robinson, he kept himself in a position to be, in a spot to be not just a touchdown, but the first touchdown for Georgia in the SEC championship. I think that's a great story. And I love the way in which Georgia provides us with great stories over and over again. I love that. I do. Let's get some DawgNation.com comments here too. There they go. DT says he watches all the videos, DawgNation publishes. He just doesn't subscribe to anything. Well, DT, we appreciate you just the same thing. And DT is almost always in the comment section, a big part of our community. So, DT, we very much appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I mean that sincerely. It really means the world to me, more than you could ever know. K-Dog also mentions Marcus Freeman. He says, I thought he was more mature than this. Look, here's what I can tell you. And I don't know, where this comes from on a maturity standpoint, but, and obviously I'm not employed by the University of Georgia, but a lot of us feel very close to this topic, whether it be 2023 when Georgia wasn't there or last year when Georgia left sooner than we wanted it to. There is nothing worse watching a playoff when you're not in it. It's just bad. It's just bad. You just feel completely irrelevant. And in 2023, I remember I was a little bit upset with some Georgia fans too, because I felt like we were doing a pretty good job of articulating the argument for Georgia. And even at the time, a lot of Georgia fans didn't want to hear it. They're like, we lost to Bama, it's all pointless. But when you go back and look at how we tried to argue back then, how Freeman and Notre Dame and Pete Bavacqua, their AD, have tried to argue now, I think what it comes down to is it just really stinks not to be in the playoff. It just really stinks to not be a part of the relevant college ball conversation. And I think Notre Dame can't believe you. This can happen to us. This is possible. It can happen to us. But so much of that's so short-sighted because why not Notre Dame? Because, from a Georgia standpoint, Georgia won 29 games in a row, lost one game by 3 points, and got eliminated from the college ball playoff consideration in 2023. I can promise you there's no argument that Notre Dame can make right now that Georgia could not have made just as forcefully back then. But it just stinks to not be included. It really does. And I do think that Notre Dame had some argument for being in there. I do. I really do think they had some argument. But I would say there is no one true right answer. There just really isn't. Most of this is in the eye of the beholder. And I'm not that scandalized by the committee, even though it seems kind of dumb. I'm not that scandalized by the committee having Notre Dame ranked ahead of Miami, only then to change their decision at the last moment. This feels like the sort of dumb thing that only the committee would do, and maybe it is. But their explanation, even if it's made up, still works that, now they're side by side. In other words, it is entirely possible that Notre Dame really is a better team than Miami. Power ratings would suggest that is true. But at a certain point, even if the numbers suggest Notre Dame is better, if the head-to-head doesn't finally come into consideration, then what's the point of playing the game? So Notre Dame had been ranked ahead of Miami because that's what power ratings would suggest should be true. But by the time it was all said and done, they really were enough within the same neighborhood of each other that I think it's appropriate for the head-to-head to matter. I'm not pro Miami. I'm not even really that anti Notre Dame. The truth is my knee-jerk instinct to rip on Notre Dame after beating Georgia a year ago. I'm probably a little slower to do that. But I don't have a problem with what the committee did. BMAC says, by the way, it's good to see BMAC in here today, that Notre Dame would have won the ACC if they were in it. I believe that's probably the case. Certainly by far and away the case, but they weren't in it. And we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, this ongoing battle between Notre Dame and the ACC. If you want the protection, if you want the protection from the league, you got to join the league. I don't think the ACC owes Notre Dame any kind of deference because it happens to have an economic relationship. Conferences are more than just loosely affiliated economic relationships. These are supposed to be. That's what the SEC is. The SEC is about a lot more than just overlapping financial incentives. It's about, frankly, folks who share the same dirt with each other. And oftentimes that leads to similar views on outlooks on life. The ACC is a little unwieldy now, but it's the same kind of thing. DT also shouting out Jay and Cody and Kaylee. Yeah, listen, I say this all the time. We've never had a better team here in terms of what we're doing on video on a regular basis. I mean, the show qualities, I think, is just skyrocketed. I mean, the stuff that Cody does on video, Kaylee when she shows up is great. Of course, I'm kidding.
Hold on. Am I on?
You don't do DawgNation Daily as much as you used to.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me slide into the frame so you can see my face when I tell you this. I don't ever come in on the days where I have to film shows, and lately I've had to film a lot of shows on Tuesday.
That's what I'm saying.
Because the schedule has been switched up. So I understand where you're coming from, but when I'm here, the effort is there. The show, nearly flawless. So
if you'll go back and rewind the tape, that's exactly what I said. When you were here, you're amazing. It just used to be that we had you, a couple of 3 times a week, maybe. Now it's like 1 time a week if I'm lucky, which I consider myself incredibly lucky. I am incredibly thankful, incredibly thankful to have you a part of the show. There was a time when it was more frequent than it is now. I mean, I just like seeing you during the week. I don't see you as much during the week anymore.
I feel like I see you almost every day.
Well,
but I get it. I get what you're saying. I'm not here to produce DawgNation Daily as much, regretfully, but you still don't have to take a shot at me.
No, I didn't take a shot. I'm giving you a compliment.
You totally did. It was very passive aggressive.
Maybe a little passive aggressive, but when you're here, you're awesome.
And also, while I'm here and I have an audience,
by all means,
Pop-Tart Bowl.
I know you
will
love.
not tolerate
I know
that
you love the
slander.
Pop-Tart Bowl. Are you millennial or Gen Z? You're Gen Z,
I'm
right?
Gen Z.
Yeah, like the Pop-Tart Bowl, I think is a very Gen Z thing. But I think of it as ritualistic humiliation. And I think that, like, if Notre Dame had not had to go to such a, and the joke is on purpose, but if they didn't have to go to such of a joke of a bowl, I do believe Notre Dame would be playing a bowl game.
And you know what? I think I agree with you on that statement because I think they know that the Pop-Tart Bowl is sort of kind of tied in with some Disney money. So that makes sense. But in a world now where most people feel like bowl games outside the college football playoff just don't matter anymore, I think the Pop-Tart Bowl has done a good job of making people invested into this game and this idea that most people don't even care about bowl games at all anymore. So the fact that they went out of their way to make this interesting and quoting it the People's National Championship, like that's something that people genuinely look forward to. And I think that's something that's lost within bowl games. Like, I'm not going to watch the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Yeah, they throw mayo on the coach,
Right.
but that makes me want to watch it less, honestly. Yeah. So at least if you're going to have this idea and it be a little bit tacky, go 100% in on it because people are invested into something like that. And that's something I can appreciate because I know Gen Z marketing is behind that.
So 2 things on this. Thing number 1 is this. As dumb as this opinion is, I do genuinely believe this, that there are some people that can only appreciate college football in an ironically humorous way. And that's what the mayonnaise thing is and the Pop-Tart thing is I think they like making fun of people who have earnest appreciation for college football, for people who have like genuine connection to it. I think there's a bunch of, not necessarily Gen Z people, but Gen Z marketers who like making fun of earnest belief. And so therefore that's what the Pop-Tart and the mayo, that's what a lot of that kind of stuff is. And so I'm not mad at people who enjoy it, but I don't enjoy that kind of ironic humor because I think it's designed to make fun of people who have earnest a love for college football.
Okay. Maybe I see some of that, but I don't know. I think the product that they have is nostalgic. I mean, everybody eats Pop-Tarts. It doesn't matter if you're Gen Z or if you're your age. I don't know what group you're in, but like everybody can enjoy a Pop-Tart. It's not an elitist material snack.
That's
it's
fair.
Affordable. Everybody can access it. So if you were going to make the decision to put that as the title name, I mean, I can appreciate the effort to do all the marketing because I think the sales went up over the last 2 years. So
no, it's a very
I can
successful
appreciate
campaign.
the ironicness in it, but I do see your point about them, I guess, making fun of the typical college football person. But, I mean, it's also a way to introduce college football to people that typically wouldn't watch it. Maybe you just like entertainment. Maybe you're a child. You invest these people into this that may not otherwise be interested in college football.
Yeah, ritualistic humiliation or not, it is a very successful campaign. I don't dispute that. Here's the second thing, and this is more just for fun. If you told me I could have the average college football coach's salary, but I'd have to have that vat of mayonnaise dumped on top of my head, even for 7 figures, Kaylee, I don't know if I could do it. And you and I, we are very, as 2 people who spend a lot of time with each other, we are very, very similar when it comes to a lot of these like condiments and we don't like pickles and a lot of this stuff that people ruin sandwiches with. We're very, very, I think, of a similar mind on this. You are not pouring a big old vat of mayonnaise on my head. You're just not doing that. Not even for $1 million or whatever the coach makes these days. Not even for 7 figures. I'm not sure I could do it.
That is my worst nightmare, to be covered in mayonnaise. That is like the one food I can't get behind it. If it's on my sandwich, I can't eat it. So I mean, the thought of being covered in that, I just don't know if I could ever get rid of that icky feeling and the smell and the texture. So the mayo bowl can't do it. That's why I can't watch it. I can't watch the coach get covered in mayo. Like I can't do it.
So to bring it back to where we started, let me see if I can say this a better way. I'm really glad you're here today. How about that? Is that a better way to say it? I'm really glad you're here today.
I'll take it.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good stuff from Kaylee Mensah. All right. Let's get a couple more comments here and we'll get ready to rock and roll after that. UGA Marine says he hates mayonnaise, but for 7 figures, dump away. Yeah. For 7 figures, I might have to do that. I mean, but I wouldn't want to, man. I'm probably not turning down the money, but boy, I wouldn't want to. That's so gross to me. And I was even that way when I was a kid. Like I remember being like at like church camp or something like that, and they do the thing, we're going to pour ketchup on your head. Even as like a teenager, I remember hating all that stuff. It's just disgusting. Just disgusting. Garrison Tugger says, give me some good points to combat my delusional Big 12 homer coworkers. They think the SEC ruined college football and ESPN props them up. They don't think there is any difference. They also think the SEC is falling off. I typically just laugh it off. The SEC isn't ruining college football. The SEC is college football. What ruins college football is nobody else seems to be able to do what the SEC does. And if you don't believe me on this, all you got to look at is a couple of key numbers. First of all, to your Big 12 friends, go back and look at the last 20 NFL drafts, 10 NFL drafts, and how many Big 12 players are even drafted. And how many of them were drafted by teams that are no longer in the Big 12? I'm thinking about a Texas or an Oklahoma. Of teams currently in the Big 12, I mean, how many draft picks have they produced in given years? Well, the SEC last year, once again, far more NFL draft picks than any other league. So you can say, well, the NFL is biased against, you can say ESPN is biased against, biased in favor of the SEC. I don't believe that's necessarily true, but you could say ESPN has bias in favor of the SEC. But is the NFL biased in favor of the SEC, or does the NFL just want the best players, and the best players happen to be in the SEC? If you're doing an SEC Big 12 argument, that's the number one thing right there. Just how few true pro prospects the Big 12 produces, and just how many on a yearly basis the SEC produces. And plus, and we may get into this at some point in time, when you look at how popular the SEC remains on television, no other league coming close. I'm not quite so sure in the future the SEC shouldn't strongly consider just doing its own thing, because there are a lot of Big 12 people or ACC people or Notre Dame people or Big 10 people who don't seem to appreciate how much the SEC does to prop this sport up. In the world of makers and takers, the SEC is the makers, and, a lot of these other leagues and programs within those leagues are net takers when it comes to the overall picture here. So maybe the SEC should take its ball and go do something else, and they would find that out for sure. Oh, gross. DT talking about an old college roommate eating mayo by itself. Like, I can't even. I mean, I don't know why I have such a weird thing about condiments, but I'm the same way about mustard. I've really grown to be that way about ketchup. I'm very weird about all that stuff. And like the people who work with me will tell you, there's a certain aspect of me that I think of as like homespun and salt of the earth. I'm, pretty, wholesome guy. But in addition to that pillar of my personality, I am also as weird as the day is long. Very particular about a lot of things, about how I eat and how I sleep and all that kind of stuff. I am bordering on being high maintenance, although I don't want to be. I am bordering on being high maintenance.
All right, I've been on this earth for 40 years. You are the first person I've met that is hit for the cycle and hates ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise.
I do. I don't like. The only condiment I like is barbecue sauce.
I can respect that. So.
I also like A1 sauce. I like very hearty masculine condiments. A1 barbecue.
I didn't know ketchup was girly, but okay.
To me, those are masculine sauces. I'm not saying you're a girl if you like ketchup. I'm just saying, or it's wrong if girls do like ketchup. It's not what I'm saying. I feel like, A1. Now, if you go to a nice steakhouse, I don't get any condiment, but on like the regular daily driver from a steak standpoint, just a little A1 on there, a little barbecue sauce on some, whatever. Those are the only condiments I like. And yes, I know barbecue sauce mostly comes from either ketchup or something like that. I'm not stupid. I'm just crazy. I do understand that. All right. Let me go back to YouTube, then we'll get some Facebooks. Mo Gooder says A1 barbecue ketchup is my rag. Yeah, so like I used to eat ketchup when I was a kid. I mean, every kid eats ketchup. And I used to eat ketchup, but somewhere a few years ago, I was like, nope, no more. Just one day, just like that. And I haven't done it since then. By the way, Dennis Wilson chimes in to say I'm going to like hurt sauce when Miami puts hands on Georgia. Let me tell you something, Dennis. Miami's got to get to Georgia, okay? And the coaching matchup between Mike Elko and Mario Cristobal, given Cristobal's in-game habits, Miami's got to get there first. Good luck with that. By the way, AVA Pop Culture says, we went from yesterday saying that BA was too soft for the military, which is true, to now saying he's too masculine for ketchup. Yeah, so my manhood exists somewhere in the sliding scale of above ketchup, but below distinguished service in our armed forces. By the way, Field Mob says, given the fact that 0 is greater than -3, he wants to congratulate the entire world for having more rushing yards than Alabama did on Saturday. That means you, wherever you are right now, had a better rushing total on Saturday than the Alabama offense did. Very good point by Field Mob on that. By the way, G Grace is here today. And I know y'all all have G Grace blocked on YouTube. And I know G Grace drives some of y'all crazy. I do get that. But I'm going to give him a compliment right now. And this is going to aggravate some of y'all when I do. But G shows up now. G shows up. Alabama loses, and he's in here. I don't know if he's here yesterday or not. Maybe he was busy. Or maybe he was here and I just didn't see him. But the point is G doesn't run from y'all. I know he aggravates you, and y'all probably aggravate him, and back and forth y'all go all the time. But G does not run from y'all. So in the fan code of conduct world, I think y'all got to give him a little credit for that. Static Faction mentioning Duke's mayonnaise. Now, I'll tell you this. My dad loved Duke's mayonnaise. I will tell you that. Most Southern, men of that generation do. Big Duke's mayonnaise guy. So I'm ashamed to slander it as much as I am. But my dad loved it. In fact, when Georgia played Clemson in 2021, right after he'd passed away, Duke's mayonnaise sponsored that game. They gave everybody like a Duke's mayonnaise, what do you call it, jar, I guess, of mayonnaise all on your media seat. And I remember thinking, I should take that home. It had the logos for both teams. It was commemorative of the game. I was like, but it's mayonnaise. That's gross. I can't do that. But I did think about my dad, though, because he loved it. Let's see what else. Raymond Brandon says only Heinz ketchup is available, or I should say acceptable. Yeah, I would say that's obviously my preferred ketchup. And when I was a kid, you always felt like you were at a fancy restaurant when they had the glass bottle of Heinz. And there's the trick, a lot of people know this, that to get it to come out, you kind of whack it on the back where the 57 is. If you kind of whack it right there, you can get it to come out a little better. And so you always knew you were eating it, you're eating at a real restaurant when they had the glass bottle of Heinz ketchup. I still love the logo. It's a distinguished looking logo, but I wouldn't touch that stuff right now. I don't know why. I don't even have an explanation for this. it's just something I've decided to be weird about. Let's see what else. Jack Bauer says he likes ketchup with his ketchup. Yeah. A lot of people do. Philip Wells also mentioning they make the Heinz 57 sauce. I used to even do that, but I don't like that anymore either. It's pretty much, and if I go to like one of these nicer burger joints where the burger costs $15, I'm always going to get either barbecue sauce or A1 on that. Sherry Newton Mosley got a very interesting idea about how you can mix a lot of this stuff together. And what's funny when it comes to barbecue sauce, like I said, I mean, I know that most barbecue, or at least, a lot of the barbecue sauce in Georgia is going to be made with a ketchup base. I do know that, but, I just something I choose not to think about. Cody Taylor asked a great question. What would your dad and grandfather think about this golden Kirby age of Georgia football? He says, my dad is gone too, and I can tell you he would be pumped about it. Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, my dad passed away in 2020, so he saw the early days of Kirby Smart and was obviously really enjoying that. Had been a very healthy man right up until he passed away, so he was enjoying all of that. But to see Georgia finally break through, I think it would have blown his mind. Now, my grandfather thought that Georgia was going to do this every year anyway. So all Georgia would have done in this age was meet his expectations. So, like, my grandfather thought Georgia was going to win every game by 40 points. So now that Georgia for a long time has mostly been winning games by 40 points, this would have essentially only met his expectations for what he always thought Georgia was going to be doing. In a lot of years where they didn't come close to doing that. But no, he would have loved it. Would have had a great time. He passed away, much longer ago, so did not get to see anything close to this era of Georgia football. But man, loved every Georgia win, enjoyed that. My dad did see some of those Kirby years, but passed away right before that national championship in 2021. So he would have been just so excited about it and would have, bought every T-shirt, whatever, every one of those collector's things, would have had them all. Yeah, no doubt. Would have enjoyed that for sure. Thank you for asking that. And for a lot of people who have those great memories and think about that, that's what it's really all about. It really is. It's one of the reasons why, I'll get on a small soapbox just for a second. It's one of the reasons why this is not just a game. People say, it's just a game. Who cares? It is not just a game, because when your team wins, life is not fair, and this is an unfair example of this. When your team wins, you get to have a set of memories with the people you share the games with that opposing fan bases do not have. And listen, if Georgia didn't have these wins, I'm certainly hopeful and believe that we'd be making family memories doing something different. Obviously, that's the case. But think about this for a moment. Like, I got to take my kids to the game on Saturday, and on Sunday morning, we're eating breakfast. We're talking about what happened the day before, and we're laughing about all this, and we're just bonding over this experience. Even though I'm working and they're at the game, when it's all back together again, we're bonding over this and sharing these conversations, walking to the stadium together. We're doing all these things that we wouldn't have if Georgia wasn't in this game. South Carolina fans don't get this. Mississippi State fans don't get this. Now, that doesn't make them lesser people, but it does make, in this particular instance, they're having a lesser experience than the rest of us are having. So whether it be, memories that you call back on or memories that you're making right now, this is why it's not just a game. Because when your team wins, you get life experiences that the other fan bases don't get. And that seems really unfair. But that's why the intensity around all this stuff is ratcheted up so much. And like, you look at online right now, the arguments about who should be in the playoff, they're worse than politics right now. I mean, we stay far away from politics on this show because of how nasty people are about politics. So help me. Don't do it right now because I'm talking to you, but go on your phone. By the way, my phone case is all torn up. Go on your phone when our show is done. the argument about who should and shouldn't be in the playoff, they're cursing each other, they're insulting each other. It's worse than the politics stuff right now. And that's not good. We don't condone that. But part of the reason why the argument's so intense is because people intuitively understand what I just said. There is a quality of life you gain from your team being in the big game or the series of big games that is the playoffs. There is a quality of life that you gain from that the other teams don't get. And it's not fair because some teams will never get them. And some teams get way more than their fair share. We are working on that right now. But it's just true. It's just way more fun to be on the winning side, especially if it's been, I mean, listen, I love Georgia football because Georgia is my state. I am very proud of where I come from, very proud. And to see the place where I come from being as good as it is right now is an incredibly satisfying experience. All right. Gail Bonner says I need to get a dog's phone case. I need to get a new phone case for sure. It's one of those things where it's like slowly unraveling, and then finally it's just it's just completely coming apart. G Grace likes Montreal steak seasoning. Not to do an ad here, but I like a little bit of that too. Although I tell you, I eat a steak for lunch almost every day, and honestly, I really don't need much more than salt and pepper and butter. That's about all. It's about all we do: salt, pepper, butter, or not pepper, salt. Just like salt and butter is about all you need. I don't really need much more than that. Miriam Corbin says her dad's been gone since 2007. He was a local sportscaster who called all the Marietta High School football games for 40 plus years. He was a Georgia fan all his life. Took me to my first Georgia game in 1956 when I was just 5 years old. He'd be loving this era of UGA football. No doubt that's the case, Miriam, and I can only imagine how proud he must have been of you, for sure. For sure. Spencer Clark agrees with me on my steak prep. G. Gray says that Bama was the most watched team in 2025, and that is true. And we said this a lot going into the playoff selection. I think that people are discovering this now, that we said this a lot. Notre Dame is not the TV draw that people once thought it was. They're just not. Not among the top 10 most watched teams, not really a part of the most watched games. Those are all SEC games. Georgia, I believe, was second. I know Alabama was number one. Georgia was either second or third. Texas was right up there too. So the top three in some order was Bama, Texas, Georgia. But the top 10 is all SEC with the exception of Ohio State. Ohio State was in there. But I'm talking about even like Ole Miss and teams like that. The SEC on television is a runaway train. I mean, it is, people can't get enough of the SEC on television. They can't. And so in all these talks about what the future of college football should be, I hope Greg Sankey, whoever's advising Greg Sankey, I hope they realize that our motivation, and by our, I mean all of us who consider ourselves to be stakeholders of the SEC, our motivation to cooperate with them, I think should be pretty limited. I do. I think it should be pretty limited. Our championship game still matters. We're not giving it away. Our TV ratings are just fine. I'm not even sure we need to play you. We're doing just fine the way we are. And y'all can have your dream about, this is going to be an international sport. We're going to compete with the NBA for rights holder agreements and things like that. You know what we're going to do? We're going to keep selling college football to people who've already proven they want to buy it. That's what we're going to do. Down here, we're going to keep selling college football to people who've already demonstrated a willingness to purchase it. And by purchase, I mean purchase with their time. And all these other pipe dreams about how big it can be. All we got to do is just throw away everything from the past and build something brand new. And it's going to be even bigger than the old thing was. Good luck with that, y'all. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. If I had my way, that's what the SEC would say. But I don't often get my way. So something worth considering. Let's see what else. Z2 is Hydra. Boy, these new YouTube names are hard for me. But Z2 says, no, I'm sorry, 7-2. Excuse me. 7-2 says 3 of the last 4 SEC titles. Georgia take that. The tide has changed and get used to it. I guess that is true, right? 3 of the last 4, 22, 24, and 25. How about that? That's awesome. That's a good thing to consider. Great time to be a Georgia fan and a fun time to be talking with you about it here as a part of our R.S. Andrews cool down. So y'all please find R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. Plumbing emergency, they can help you out with that. Your water heater needs to be replaced, they can do it for you in many cases the same day. So please find them online at rsandrews.com. They'll take great care of you on all of that. Also, I'll see you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily presented by ServPro. Hope you'll have a great day. Plenty more fun to have tomorrow. So hope you'll come back and see us then here on DawgNation Daily presented by ServPro. We'll talk to you then, everybody.